Lisa Leslie, a person who needs no introduction, but I'll do for one anyway, is with us at Locked On Women's Basketball, which starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal, thanking you for making us your first listen every day, where we cover women's basketball 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, all things past, present, and future. Saturday, the WNBA draft show. A lot to talk about this time of year as well. And of course, it's not just me, it's the entire group over at The nexthoops.com, where we have over 100 reported pieces every month on the women's game. We're going to have 3 different reporters in Greenville, 3 different reporters in Seattle, covering those super regionals for you, and 8 of us, myself included, at the Final Four in Dallas. And what we will be talking about is what Lisa Leslie, I'm sure, will be talking about. I'm not going to insult your intelligence, dear listeners, by telling you that she is anything other than a legend of the game. I'm a nerd stat-wise, so I like to go back and look at where you rank, Lisa, among the all-time greats. And, every leaderboard, you are right there across the board. So I am just delighted to chat with you about the game and where we are now heading into the Sweet 16.
Well, thank you, Howard. I'm so happy to be here on behalf of DraftKings and just really excited about March, everything that's happening. When you talk about the men's and women's tournament, just in general, this time of year is one of the most exciting times, one of the most watched, even around the world of men and women's basketball. So, hey, let's get into it.
I think it's really significant. I do want to mention that up top, that you're working with DraftKings. FanDuel is one of our sponsors as well. And you're seeing this sort of across the landscape. There's this understanding that something Gino Auriemma said at a Final Four that I was at, actually the last time we were in Dallas, saying that we're not going to have equality between men's and women's basketball until we have those opportunities be equal on the financial side, even on the sports betting side. And I just wonder how much bigger picture you feel like that matters for the way in which we think about the women's tournament and the way in which it needs to be equal to what the men's tournament is.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, Howard, and it really goes back to, listen, the opportunities are coming when we have brands like a DraftKings, and you may have seen me before with them in the Super Bowl commercial, and so it's so exciting to continue this relationship for me personally. But it's about what they're doing as a sports betting industry. I'm happy to join it because they are changing the game, if you will. Mm-hmm. Yes, we want you to have fun and bet and be responsible, but it's also about the awareness that they're bringing in. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but for March Madness, this is the first time DraftKings has the first women's bracket where they were donating $1 for everybody who signed up to participate in the women's bracket. They actually, it was like 49,000 plus people who signed up, which is amazing in our first year for them having that. But $25,000 will be donated to the Women's Sports Foundation, which I am also a huge fan of, that Billie Jean King began. So we're talking about being a game changer, literally, because the more eyeballs that gets on this women's game, the better we will be. And I think the parity of what's happening in the tournament, as we're starting to see, makes it even more exciting, so much more fun for all the fans, men and women, to get involved and have some fun.
I mean, the parity is significant. And again, for our listeners, the first time since 1998, we've seen multiple 1 seeds not make it to the Sweet 16. Lisa and I were bereft, talking offline before we got on here, about our Final Four picks that were, taken out before the regionals even came around. Lisa, I know you had Stanford. I had Indiana in the Final Four. Just generally speaking, though, it just felt like the entire weekend had that. I even watched, Villanova. I was in the Finneran Pavilion this weekend to see Washington State get knocked off by FGCU, the 12 seed. It does seem as if we're just seeing a wider funnel of talent going to more places. Do you think it's a consequence of players wanting to go build their own programs, or do you think it's more a question of just because there have been more opportunities to play, we're just seeing more and more talent up and down the sport.
Honestly, I just believe that the talent level is rising so high. And here's a few of the reasons. Having access, right? Social media is changing the game literally as well, because these young kids are having access to anything. You can go back and watch, Willis Reed walk back into, the garden. Like, you can literally go and watch and study this game at a level that we didn't have access to. We were lucky if you caught a women's game on television when I was growing up. You're lucky to even. I missed the Olympics, and the '84 Olympics happened in Los Angeles, and I was 12 and never saw one day of the Olympics. So I think it's all about, the access that these young people have. We're seeing the results of that now. Remember, when I came out, the WNBA did not exist. Our opportunities to play professional basketball was only overseas. And there were some smaller leagues that had began and failed, but nothing of the magnitude of the WNBA. And so when you look at sports across the board, the access that these young players have had to the game has changed their ability to play this game. And the game itself has changed, right? We're seeing this whole 5-out, lots of ball movement and pick and rolls, and a little bit more one-on-one, where these players' one-on-one skills have increased exponentially as well. So I'm feeling like we're starting to get some teams, we know, the UConns and South Carolinas of the world, they are powerhouses because of, one, what Dawn Staley has done there and to build her program, and what Gino Auriemma has created there to build his program. But there's a lot of kids out there who are also going, you know what? I want to stay here. Just, for example, Juju Watkins, right? She's staying home. And here you have Juju, who's the top high school player in the country, just walked away with the Naismith, player of the year. Yeah. But she decided to stay home like I did at USC, and she wants to try to do something new. So I love it. I signed up for it. And I think that's the beauty of it, right? Like, we don't want to just see the same teams. Unless they kick butt and get there, then, hey, they earned it. But I love the fact that there have been some upsets.
It is a lot of fun. And again, you were coming out of school, would have been the Aaliyah Boston of your time. But right, there was no mock draft. There was no draft. It was before the league comes along. And so it's really interesting to me that you faced, obviously, such a fundamentally different landscape. I am fascinated by what your alma mater is building. Lindsay Gottlieb is as smart as they come, and I am so excited to see what she and Juju Watkins do. With the fact, I think, and maybe you disagree, I think you guys overachieved this year, even to get to the tournament in Lindsay's first year. You feel that way too?
Well, I don't know about overachieving. I think when you set a certain chemistry and a certain culture, USC is just like being in LA in general. It's a place where if you're not winning, you're failing, period. Like, we don't have a happy medium. And I feel like when you come in with that sort of winning attitude and you're changing the culture, then you're surrounding yourself around what SC is used to. And I believe they can get back to that point. And obviously Juju will definitely help the women's program turn it around. And for me, listen, I think we went to 2 or 3 Elite Eights. Yep. It's tough when you're trying to go to a program that, when I went, was in pretty much last place in the Pac-10 back then, to try to get us back to, we actually won a Pac-10 championship. But to the Elite Eight, falling short of getting to that Final Four is heartbreaking. But that is part of the sacrifice when you go to a program that is not a storied program who's trying to really rebuild, and you become a part of that process. So again, I encourage it. I wouldn't change it, but it definitely was very difficult. I just remember at times we only had like 8 players available to play. So again, it's the experience, and that's what it is. And I'm happy that she's doing what's best for her.
I am too. And again, like you said, it was a very different time. Back then, you had to beat Stanford and Tara Vanderveer. And now in the Pac-12, you have to, it's still Tara Vanderveer.
Well, it's still Tara, but Utah did an amazing job this year. It's great to see them, right? They're going to play LSU on Saturday. And that's going to be a huge game because that's
they are so good. We were talking to Dan Hughes about this yesterday, and we had Lynn Roberts on the show a couple of weeks ago. But the way in which they play the game, like you said, they play in a 5-out way, the way the does now. Although I do, and again, I really think it's important that people understand this. You were 5-out style before there was a 5-out style. I'm just going to throw the numbers out there. People need to know Lisa Leslie shot 42.3% from three for the 1999 LA Sparks. So, yeah, this is new in terms of a lot of people doing it, but you were doing it first. Do you ever wish, like, oh, God, I wish I had been in the league at a time where they were able to maximize everything I did as a 5?
No, because you know what's so funny when, like, even having the Lisa Leslie Award, where I get a chance to watch these amazing centers, and we just did our final votes. We know Aaliyah Boston's won it 3 years in a row. But the beautiful part about me looking now is that there's never been one player that's done all the things that I do, but there's players that do some of the things that I do, right? So whether it's been the inside or been dominating from the inside, but Aaliyah Boston doesn't shoot threes, but she's still an amazing player. And I respect that, like her hard work, her ability to rebound, her ability to offensive rebound. Like she is literally everywhere the ball is, where I'm like, I don't know. I look at her and I'm like, did I rebound like that? Like she has an amazing nose for the ball and such a touch and putback, right? And so I think that it's very interesting that you see different styles, but a 5 that shoots the 3 the way that I did, or drive the way that I did, or can bring the ball up. We've seen that evolve of that, right? Candace Parker, even playing at the 4 and 3 and 4, able to do some of those things because at her height, still able to get inside. Not that the back to her basket was her bread and butter, so to speak, but she could definitely get buckets left hand and right hand. So I just love, I love the game. I've always been a student of the game, and I've always loved to add pieces to my game. And, like I always tell my teammates, I play the center just because that's what the team needs, not because that's the only thing that I can do. And so that's the beauty of the game, right? Like just continuing to improve and get better. Mm-hmm. And I feel so proud watching the college game, because I'm like, those are like my little babies out there. I watch them, and the game is just getting so good. When you look at LSU Reese, for example, I mean, she's phenomenal. And she's the big girl. She has charisma. She has charm. She has her lashes on, her hair is done, like, it's like, oh, I'm such a proud mom watching, but she's out there, wrecking havoc on the defense, 25-13, like those are excellent numbers. And sometimes people look and are not really appreciating the level of basketball that you are watching. It's been amazing to me.
It is next level. And so I do want to get into a few of those matchups here in segment 2. Do need to let the good folks at home know about Ultimate Pro Basketball GM, which is our new partner and the sponsor of today's episode, the mobile game Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. You can become an NBA GM, manage your basketball franchise, hire the right coaches and assistants, trade and train players, make draft picks, even navigate your franchise through free agency and the draft and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. So if you go and use the promo code Locked On, you get 100% free boost to your franchise once you download it. You can just get the app over in the App Store. You use the promo code Locked On to get that 100% free boost. ProBasketballGM.com, Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. So you talked a little bit about the matchups, and to me, Utah versus LSU is like the best example of this, right? Where Utah plays this game as fast as anybody in the country. Alyssa Peely, just remarkable in what she's able to do, but it's hard to conceive of the way in which Utah would slow down Angel Reese. If you were Lynn Roberts, what would you go about doing to try and find a way to do it?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting adjustment, because sometimes, as we know, it's a chess match, right? Like, what adjustments do you want? Do you want to leave that big out there and try to pull her out and stretch her to bring her out of the paint so that you can possibly go around her? But she's a very good perimeter defender, even at her size, like I was. Like, I had no problem, coming out to the 3-point line. So I don't know if you want to move, if you want to do a little bit of, sometimes you do some bump screens where you have her coming off, maybe even like run something like a flex where you're moving her a little bit more, or you just simply play your game, keep it out wide and move the ball around, use pump fakes and try to get her out and get her in foul trouble. And then offensively, you still got to pick your poison. On the defense, do you change your defenses up? Do you try and double every time and make her push it out? I think for LSU, it's going to be tough to stop their inside game. So maybe you want to force and see if they can make enough 3-pointers to beat you, because their threes versus, Utah's threes versus LSU threes, that might be where you have to win the ball game. And so it's going to be, and then rebound by committee. Of course, we know LSU does a really nice job on the boards, and Gary's phenomenal offensive rebounder as well. So it's going to be important for them to really try and keep them to one and done. Again, easier said than done. We know Kim Mulkey will have a game plan that would be really tough for Utah to match up against as well.
It's going to be fascinating. And yes, it's easier said than done with the rebounding that Angel Reese provides, especially. That game to me is one of the premier games possibly of this entire tournament.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And you have Flage, who, even though she's a freshman, she doesn't play like a freshman. And she's another person who I really feel is the X factor, because when her shot's on and when she's really attacking the basket, she's a dangerous player, because you can't really afford to double team her also, because she's out on the wing. And then for LSU, getting out in transition buckets are really going to be key. The only thing I say that's been probably the most disappointing about watching a tournament is that there are a lot of layups missed. I'm like, girls, ladies, please get your eyes up and use a pump fake if you need to gather before you shoot. But there have been so many layups missed, and that's the one area I'd like to see just cleaned up. Like, the girls have to do a much better job of finishing on the inside and staying, focused on the target through contact.
It's really interesting. And again, it's so often the difference between a win and a loss. And we've seen that on a couple of occasions. You saw, just this weekend, Washington State, when they fell after their amazing Pac-12 tournament run, they missed a handful of layups there in the first round. And you could even see FGCU gaining confidence with it. So I agree. There's also, and this comes down to a question that I just have kind of big picture of, can anybody beat South Carolina? And I think in order for it to happen, it's going to have to be, you're going to have to make those baskets. So at the risk of talking about your alma mater's arch rival in UCLA, I am curious whether you think and now legally, are you allowed to say nice things about UCLA if you went to USC?
I am. Once we get out of the Pac-12, I half of my bracket got messed up because like, Pac-12, let's go. I'm like, Arizona. I mean, everybody. The men's, I'm like, so sometimes the loyalty to the Pac-12 gets me, comes back to bite me. But yeah, I am. UCLA, they played an outstanding game. It was tough against Oklahoma. Was Oklahoma correct? Against Oklahoma. We watched so many games, but against Oklahoma, and that kind of came down to the wire. But them having that home game was so helpful, having the crowd on their side and so fired up. But it's going to be interesting to see as all these teams move to neutral courts now. That that basket sometimes rims a little bit tighter, shots are off, and this is where the true, I think the fight, the heart comes in, because you got to crash that boards. It's not the first shot, it's that second and third shot, those offensive rebounds, those 50-50 balls that have to be picked up. And so this is where I believe the even playing field we'll either see some teams rise to the occasion, or we'll see teams fall that played so amazing at home but not so well out on the road.
It will be fascinating. It'll be good practice for UCLA, because UCLA and, of course, your alma mater will be heading to the Big Ten. Somehow USC is going to have Piscataway, New Jersey on their schedule. That's going to take some real getting used to. That's for sure.
But wait, are you talking about South Carolina?
No, I'm saying UCLA and USC eventually are going to be moving to the Big Ten.
So, yeah. Got it. I'm catching up to you. I'm like, wait, what are we talking about? I thought you were talking about in the tournament. Right. No, yes, the Big Ten next year. That's going to be – so listen, that's going to be amazing, right? We talked about it a little bit already, but having Juju there, and then her first time in the Big Ten will be, she has nothing to compare it to. Right. So that's going to be awesome. She's going to get used to the physicality, right? Because the game versus East Coast and West Coast is a little bit different, but also the travel when you're East Coast time and having to play ball there, then coming back and playing on the West Coast. Those are things and challenges that, because they will be new for her, it won't be quite an adjustment as it will be for the upperclassmen who have something to compare to, and hopefully they won't complain.
For sure. And getting you ready for the WNBA travel as well, which will be
absolutely. The other thing, Howard, which is really good about it to me, Okay, so I'm an LA girl, right? But now I live on the East Coast in Florida. I
Mhm.
see why half the coast never sees the West Coast basketball. Why we get slighted in so many areas is because everybody's freaking asleep. So
Mhm.
now it's going to be great for USC also to have some opportunities to play here on the East Coast and visually have maybe some of those TV games or have some of the East Coast voters and media have a chance to see that level of talent as well.
It is. I have sacrificed so much sleep for the Pac-12. It's such a good
I
conference to
sacrifice all
watch.
the time for the Lakers, trust me.
Yes, you know it all too well. So it's very true, and I totally agree with you. I want to talk about the wreckage that was once our Final Four and how we rescue our Final Fours in segment three. Do very quickly, of course, want to talk about FanDuel, which is one of our sponsors, and they offer a no sweat first bet here during the NCAA tournament of up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. You just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's talk our brackets. Woof. So I had Indiana going to the Final Four. Miami comes through with an amazing, amazing upset. Do you think that Villanova and Maddie Siegrist now are just too much, or do you think we are in a scenario where it's going to be Utah or LSU?
Honestly, Villanova and Miami are two teams that I didn't pick. I didn't see them getting this. So I don't know much about previously to watching them. I thought Miami looked really good. I thought their defense was excellent. The heart and fight of both their twins was really amazing. So I'm not the expert on those two teams because I haven't seen them much. They're
Sure.
both surprised. But when you look at LSU and Utah, that side of the bracket, I got a little bit more, nervous about because I feel like both those teams, that's really the game there. Who's going to get to the Final Four between those two? I'm a little, I don't know. My bracket, I actually picked Utah. So
Oh, so here we are. So we've got it, the Utes and Lynn
I picked
Roberts.
Utah, but I'm really rethinking that choice
Ah,
because LSU looks so good. They really look so good. And I thought because we were talking about strength of schedule before, right? So I'm like, well, they lost to South Carolina pretty bad. The top teams, but I might have made a mistake on that. So not really sure. When I look at who else we have, Virginia Tech. We haven't talked about Virginia Tech, but Virginia Tech, did they lose?
no, Virginia Tech's still with them, and
Virginia Tech's still in it, right? Who are they
oh
playing
yeah,
next? Tennessee?
they are Virginia Tech, Tennessee. I got to tell you, by the
Tennessee.
way, it has given me life that you're so confused about it. Because like if Lisa Leslie doesn't know, then I feel better about how confused I am about it
No,
at
no,
this.
no. It's just that here's the reason why. I
Yeah.
have men and women's brackets, and we're watching so much basketball
Oh
that
my
you really can't keep up with all of it. And then all the upsets, so it messes up your bracket because I have who I thought was going to win. I
God.
actually have Virginia Tech and Tennessee. So that's going to be a good game. Tennessee's been playing great also. I've really been surprised by them. And again, we know that they lost to South Carolina, but they played really well. And for them to knock out LSU, I was a little bit like, oh, okay. They found a way to get it done, in the SEC tournament.
Really telling. Yeah.
So that was good. But Virginia Tech and Tennessee, I actually picked Virginia Tech.
Yeah. Well, and the Hokies are looking good. Georgia Amore just remarkable. Well, Lisa, I could do this all day, but
I
I,
know.
I'm so
Okay,
glad.
but you asked me about my Final Four. Let me just tell you,
Yeah,
South
sure.
Carolina is still my number one. I don't know who can take them down. Now that Stanford is out, that was my Final Four. If Iowa comes in there and South Carolina and Iowa match up, I'm a little nervous about that matchup. I'm a little nervous about that matchup because they play a nice 4 out 1 in, and I'm a little nervous about that matchup. That's all I'll say. I picked UConn to get back to the Final Four just because Gino's Gino and he does an amazing job with his players. You have AZ Fuzz is back out there, so you just don't know. And I picked Utah. So we'll see if LSU can make me wrong. If they do, congratulations, ladies. Really, I probably got that wrong.
Cannot wait to see it. Going to be a fascinating time. Lisa Leslie, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. All the best to our listeners. Make sure you're back with us tomorrow. We're going to get you all prepared for these games. Until then, I am Howard Megdal wishing you a wonderful day.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.